Welcome to another episode of Addicted to Bricks. I'm Steve, and I think we're going to have a pretty exciting day today. I'm not the best builder out there, and it seems like a lot of the things that I build to work into my Lego city look like a 4-year-old built them, which is great if a 4-year-old builds them, but not when you're my age and you're trying to build an authentic city and you have those beautiful modular buildings to compete with. So I had this idea that I would order some custom Lego instructions online and share that experience with you, see how it all works out. So that's exactly what I did. So I thought at first I better start small, and I wanted something with maybe some brand name recognition. So I thought maybe a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks or a McDonald's, and I was plinking around the internet looking for solutions. I really wanted to keep it around 500 to 700 pieces, so it'd be a quick build, and maybe we could show you how we built it. But somehow I got off track. I'm not quite sure. I know that one of the stumbling blocks for me was that oftentimes they look like they were created in Lego Digital Designer, or they look like CAD drawings, and I really wanted to get something where the designer had bothered to build the model and then had actual photographs of it. And while that's not where I ultimately wound up, I still think that that's good advice if you're out there designing sets for sale, or at least custom instructions for sale, that you should take some photographs of an actual completed model and share those. It certainly would have made me pull the trigger maybe even more frequently than I did. As it is, I only bought one thing. It was a little bit bigger than I had planned, and a lot more pieces than I had planned, but things went pretty well, and I'd like to share that experience with you. So what I finally decided to get was a church, because what Lego town is complete without a church? And I think we all know that Lego is not likely to release a church of their own. I'd seen some great mocks or my own creations online. A lot of people especially have taken the Lego Tower Bridge and modified that in a way to make it look like a church. And I didn't really have any great ideas on my own. Like I said, I'm not as creative maybe as I'd like to be, or as I imagine myself being. So this seemed like a really good choice. And so I got it from BrickBuildersPro. They have a website, BrickBuildersPro.com. I haven't asked for their permission to do this, so hopefully they won't mind, because I have almost all good things to say about the experience. So you go to their website, BrickBuildersPro.com. I downloaded it for $11.99. I should say I paid $11.99 with my PayPal account, and then they sent me an email almost immediately, if I recall correctly. It has been a couple of weeks now, with a link so I could go and download it that confirmed that I'd paid for it. And you get a couple of files. You get an XML file, which I didn't mess with at all, but there's a way you can use that and import that into BrickLink, and you can populate a wish list and go to town hunting for those bricks. I didn't have any experience with that. I wish I had something to share with you there. But you also get 2 PDF files, a 2-part instruction. It's very much like any Lego instruction if you've gone to their website and downloaded instruction books. And then also a parts list, which I went to the trouble of printing out. Now the ad for it, the listing for it on their website, says that it is, let me see, I want to say 1,800 pieces. Yeah, I'm sure you can't make it out here, but it says 1,800, it says 1,800 pieces on the website, and the parts list says 2,112 pieces. So there's a little disparity there, and I will share with you that I had some pieces left over when I was done. So I don't know if maybe I missed a couple of steps, but these are the parts that I pulled for it that I didn't ultimately use, including 28 of these round turntable pieces. The parts list asked for 30, and I don't even recall using 2 of them. I may have counted wrong, or I may in fact have employed 2 of them and have since forgotten. This was really helpful to have the list, to find the parts. Let's talk about that experience of acquiring the parts. I'd really hoped to be able to say to you, I got all the parts and they cost me this much money. But unfortunately for you, fortunately for me, I had the bulk of the parts in my personal collection, and what I wasn't able to put together in my personal collection, I pulled from here in my BrickLink store, and I did wind up placing 3 orders on BrickLink to get all the remaining parts that I needed. I spent about $40 on BrickLink, and I think I pulled about $40 worth of parts out of the BrickLink store. I did order some parts that I didn't need in order to hit people's minimum purchases, and I really wanted to focus on this project on having all the white pieces be new, which at the end of the day, maybe you might not want to. It might add a little character to it if you use some older discolored white pieces. At any rate, I wish I had an answer for you on how much it cost me. Maybe next time I'll just make sure I order everything from BrickLink so I can give you a real number on the cost to put that together. The church turned out great. Let's slide it into the frame here and give you a look. It's a corner building, which is nice. It has all of the standard Technic pins in the bottom, so it'll fit right in with your other modular buildings. I think it's a really nice size and the right scale, and there's not much of it I would change at all. I didn't modify any of it when I built it. I built it exactly to specifications, and really the only change, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but since it's on my mind and it's sitting here in front of me, is that the bell, if you can see the bell and the bell tower here, is 3 yellow pieces, and I think it'd be really cool to do it in some of those new gold pieces that probably weren't available when they designed this church. I don't know how long this design has been available. So BrickBuildersPro, they have their website. They also have an eBay store, although I checked that just a few minutes ago, and their eBay store appears to be closed. They have a lot of other models. I don't really know anything about the company. I haven't had any communication with anybody there, but the transaction went really smoothly. The parts were easy to put together, as I said. I'm not aware of any really rare or hard to find parts that were in there. The rarest would probably be the dark tan 1x2 brick with the brick pattern on it. And fortunately, I managed to get a big selection of those from the pick-a-brick wall years ago. I imagine it could be expensive. There's about 120 of those in the build, and that might be the priciest portion of the build if I were to guess. Following the instructions was really easy. I waited for my few parts that I needed to arrive from the BrickLink merchants and got right to work. And it took me about 8 hours to pull all the parts I needed. Over the course of 4 days, about 2 hours a day in the evening when I got home from work, I dedicated to just pulling the parts. I didn't do the best job of organizing them, so then when I was building, there was a lot of sorting. I'd recommend maybe being a little more organized when you go to build. And then the build actually only took me about 5.5, 6 hours. So it took me longer to put the parts together than it took me to actually build the model. Oh, and one more thing about the parts list is very thorough. Actually, 2 more things. Some of the colors don't match the colors that are used on BrickLink. So they'll have medium stone gray instead of light bluish gray. So you want to be careful about that. I don't know if that's a country thing or if those are old names from before I got into Lego that are no longer used, and some of the part numbers are different as well. Not that you can't find those parts, but now the tiles that are made, the Lego tiles, have a what they call a groove, like a little ledge, makes them easier to pull off of a plate, and those have the same part number as the tiles that didn't have that groove. But now there's a B on the end, and the ones that have the B on the end are going to be easier to find and usually more affordable, especially if you're looking for new brick. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind that there are some alternate part numbers that you can use. If you have the experience level to know that you want to look for the more current pieces, that might be really helpful. Or if you know somebody that can point you in the right direction. And then likewise, I maybe put a little too much effort into matching all the colors, and I kind of wish at this point that I'd gone through the instructions and found some instances where maybe color wasn't so important, and I might have more easily sourced those parts in a different color, and maybe because they're obscured in the model, you wouldn't have known anyway. So that's something that I didn't employ that you probably should. So let's talk about the model. I'll kind of bring it into the frame here so you can remember what we're talking about. And Of course, I think the thing that drew me to it and that was the most challenging part of the build, but the most satisfying once I was done, is those stained glass windows. And we'll show you some shots where we tried to light it from behind. And this would be great if you have some experience lighting the interiors of your models. I haven't done that, but this would be a great model to put some lights inside. These windows really are bright and colorful when you can get some light behind them. And if you look around to the back of the model here, it's all fully enclosed, so it's truly a modular building as opposed to a playset, but then that obscures light from getting inside so it doesn't light up the front as nicely. Thought about for a minute putting a candle inside, but that probably would have been a bad idea, so we didn't do that. There's some interesting techniques that I learned from building it, and I'd have to say that structurally it's pretty stable and pretty sound, with exception to the roof, which at the risk of sounding British, it's a bit fiddly. It really is. In a minute we're going to take this apart and try to show you some of the insides, and I'm already having a little anxiety about how I'm going to put the roof back together once we've disassembled a portion of it. The biggest challenge, as I said, was the windows, both with regard to interpreting the instructions in a way that made them come together right. They are pretty much shot, every step is shot from the same angle. So I used some as reference pictures the color photograph of the church that was on the website. And then I just tried to pick up visual cues around the edge and match those, even if it meant I didn't do the step the way they outlined it. I didn't do them in order. And you really have to hold it with both hands and put all those windows together. But in the end, it was really satisfying. It was great how they fit in there and how that all worked out. In the instructions, the door calls for a transparent jewel piece as the doorknob. I'm going to have a hard time showing that here, but you're familiar with that piece. They're everywhere. And it won't fit in the door. It doesn't stay there. So I just left that out. I don't think that makes a difference in the model at all. And I have a couple of notes here. I just want to make sure I'm saying everything I needed to say about the building. Oh, there's a couple of plates with a bunch of brown seats inside that hopefully we'll see in a bit that serve as the pews in the church. And there's not adequate support for that. So if you watch, I think it was around step number 27, where they put some plates in there and it's off balance. You could just throw a couple other in there and it'll stay. I didn't do that because I thought it might serve a purpose later for parts that I thought should go there but weren't in the instructions, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to make sure I did it exactly as the instructions said, but I'd like to go back and add some support there. I mentioned the color names are different. There's some alternate part numbers, and that there's a number of places where the placement in the instructions are obscured. Here's a good illustration of that. This is the final step, or one of the final steps, is this portion of the roof here that covers from the tower back to this flat roof. And it's the roof assembly is what we call a mini build, where it's built separately and then added to the model. And there could have been a few more of those in this, but I digress. The entire roof is constructed in two parts, and then when you go to add it to the church, you see this view and you just see them appear behind here. So it was a real struggle for me to figure out, just on the little edges that I can see, that you can probably see at that camera angle, how that was supposed to fit in place. So it took a little creativity, it took a little perseverance to get that in place, but ultimately I think it all worked out. So just be prepared for that. If you need really explicit instructions, or depending on your experience level, if you need some help or time, you want to address the roof and the stained glass windows when you're patient, when you have more time, and when you think you're best prepared to deal with those challenges. They were the most challenging parts of the build. I think that's all I wanted to talk about before we bust it open and have a look inside, so why don't we go ahead and do that now? Let me back up. So this is a modular build, but not in the traditional sense where it's floor on top of floor on top of floor. You can see this delineation here, and ultimately you'll see that we can take that apart pretty clearly on those two floors, but that gets interrupted by the interesting roof lines, or here where there's actually four different pieces, maybe even a fifth, that we could take apart. So I just wanted to show you that real quickly. So this here was the most difficult part of the build, both in terms of trying to figure out how to place it, and then once I had my fingers in there, keeping it all intact and maintaining the model without damaging it. But I think it'll come out pretty easily. We can just, they're on hinges, so we can pull that up. And I think we can force that off. There we go. So it's on these hinges here. And the hinges were put in place and the structure in the top, and then you put the roof elements on top of that. And I really think it should all have been accomplished in a mini build, and then you could go back and put it all on in one piece, which is what I did. Then what I think we'll do next, I'm hoping we can get this roof off here without doing too much damage. Yeah, this will come apart, and that'll give you a view inside the church. Let's see if we can maybe hold that up to the camera. It's not really well lit inside. There's some detail in there that hopefully you can pick out. And then this floor should also come off. I think we're going to lose part of the roof with this, so cross your fingers, but I think we're going to lose a fair amount of the roof. The front, yeah, that's all going to come apart there. Sometimes these modular builds there. We'll just take it out in a couple of chunks and hope that we can figure out how to put that back together later. Thankfully, I paid for the instructions, so I can go back and start over if I have to. So there's the inside of the church. Somehow I went wrong when I ordered the brown seats that make up the pews, and there's some seating up here, and there's supposed to be 4 more chairs up in there, and those are missing. Since I'm going to put it in my Lego City and I'm not going to play with it, I'm not as concerned as about the interior as I am with the exterior. You can see hopefully the stained glass windows and how those are intact here, and the pieces that they use there, the clear base pieces so that the light will go through. That's really cool. There's some steps to go upstairs. There's an interesting floor pattern on the entrance. And in here, you can see there's a cross against the wall. That too was a little bit fiddly. They had you build that in place, and I think it should be a mini build that you build outside. So if you buy the instructions, maybe when you get to those steps, build it and then place it in there. It kept coming apart every time I tried to add pieces to it back there. But all in all, I think a really clever solution. Also like on these stained glass windows here on the back of the church, how they've alternated the blue and the green, and they're very consistent with that all the way around. Oh yes, it has a baptismal font in there, and I imagine maybe those are candles in the front. So we managed to get it apart without damaging too much of the roof. I think lastly, these eaves, I'd like to talk about those. You can see how these eaves come up here, and I just broke off another part, I hate to keep using the term, but I kept thinking about it when I built it, kind of a fiddly bit. And those stay together really kind of loosely there, while conversely on the other side of the church fits together really nicely, and I don't have any play. And I don't know what I did wrong, or if it's just the stress on the parts, but I think all in all, I'm really pleased with that architectural detail, and those elements could be constructed and then put on where the instructions tell you to construct a large portion of them right here in place, and they kept crumbling and coming off. And next to the stained glass windows, I really like all the architectural detail that there is in this tower in the front of the church that is oriented right on the corner. If you have your street going by, I think that'll look great. And there's not a lot of detail inside, but I thought I'd show you that you can take it apart pretty easily. This is 3 different builds, but there's nothing inside there, so you can leave that off in one piece. And then in here, you could get a view of the 3 seats or 4 seats that are missing if I had them. And then it'll come off further, but I don't really see a need to do that. So all in all, I think you've seen the better part of what there is there, and like to, of course, leave a lot to the imagination so that maybe you'll be inspired to get the instructions and do it yourself. So there you have it from BrickBuildersPro, the little corner church. 1,800, 2,000 pieces, depending on who you trust there. And I think I forgot to mention earlier, that's the name of the model, the Little Corner Church. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're inspired to maybe buy some Lego instructions from somebody. If there's another model that you'd like to see reviewed, maybe put in the comments below and I'll do my best. It's pretty time consuming and I could see how it could get pretty expensive, but I really enjoyed this and I think I'd be up for doing something like this again. If you've had some experiences and there's things you'd like to recommend, I'd love to hear from you. I'd especially like to do, as I mentioned earlier in the video, some branded stores or like a Taco Bell or a Dunkin' Donuts, and I see those around, but if you have one to recommend, I'd appreciate that tip. Be sure to like the video if you did in fact like it, and subscribe to Addicted to Bricks if you would like to see more material like this. My name's Steve, and thanks for joining us.